Peace and love. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you're a returning viewer, as I always say, I appreciate you helping me build this platform, getting this content up. This is going to be over the Black Towns Part 2, but I'm going to break these Black Towns into a series, something simple for the people. Instead of making hour-long videos, I give you like a 20, 30-minute, something on the people, something on the town. But I got a lot of names in this one. 2, 3, 4 towns. I believe it's 4 towns in this one. But without holding y'all, we're gonna jump straight into it. Peace and love, family. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Islam.
On behalf of Akuno Call for Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know? Every day, one step at a time, man. We gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Yeah. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate and seeking knowledge, make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day, make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that, my flesh can pass away.
Fortmose, Florida, 1738 to 1820. Established in 1738, Fortmose was the first free Black settlement in what is now the United States. Located just north of St. Augustine, Florida, Fortmose played an important role in the development of colonial North America. As Great Britain, France, Spain, and other European nations competed for control of the New World and its wealth, they all, in varying ways, came to rely on African labor to develop their overseas colonial possessions. Exploiting its proximity to plantations in the British colonies in North America and the West Indies, King Charles II of Spain issued the Edict of 1693, which stated that any male slave of an England plantation who escapes to Spanish Florida would be granted freedom provided he joined the militia and became a Catholic. This edict became one of the New World's earliest emancipation proclamations. By 1738, there were 100 Blacks, mostly runaways from the Carolinas, living in what became Fortmose. Many were skilled workers, blacksmiths, carpenters, cattlemen, boatmen, and farmers. With accompanying women and children, they created a colony of freed people that ultimately attracted other fugitive slaves. When war broke out in 1740 between England and Spain, the people of St. Augustine and nearby Fortmose found themselves involved in a conflict that stretched across 3 continents. The English sent thousands of soldiers and dozens of ships to destroy St. Augustine and bring back any runaways. They set up a blockade and bombarded the town for 27 consecutive days. Hopelessly outnumbered, the diverse population of Blacks, Indians, and whites pulled together. Fortmose is one of the first places attacked. Led by Captain Francisco Menendez, the men of the Fortmose militia briefly lost the fort but eventually recaptured it, repelling the English invasion's force. Florida remained in Spanish hands and for the next 80 years remained a haven for fugitives from the British colonial possessions of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, and later when the possessions became part of the United States. Then we have Freehill, Tennessee of 1823, which was a town founded by slaves, or freed slaves, but this was written by Joey Garrison, July 9, 2016. Tennessee community founded by freed slaves fight extinction. It is called Free Hill, or often Free Hills, and this unincorporated enclave in tiny, poor, and otherwise mostly white Clay County is one of Tennessee's last remaining Black settlements established by freed slaves. People in this county along the Tennessee-Kentucky border, about 2 hours northeast of Nashville, tell the story of a white slave owner named Virginia Hill of North Carolina who bought the property to free her slaves and give them a secluded place to live. Historians aren't certain about all the facts or years and what might be part folklore, but documents prove that free Blacks had settled at Free Hill before the Civil War. Poverty has been rampant here. Free Hill's elders had dirt floors, no electricity, and used donkeys to get around on dirt streets. But a place that once was home to around 400 people between 1920 and 1950 now survives with 70 or so residents these days. It has been shrinking for years, one of the numerous Civil War-era Black towns in the Southeast that have declined or died out entirely as the nation has integrated. For the people of Free Hill, that reality put added significance on the past weekend, when an estimated 300 other descendants who now live elsewhere returned to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Free Hill Church of Christ, the historic heart of the community. Activities during the 3-day reunion, an annual event on the second weekend in July, included a church and dedication, history and celebration, and song and dance. The theme of this year's homecoming, Remember Our Past to Preserve Our Future. People who are proud of their roots They prefer the gritty rural lifestyle, and they hope their past isn't one day forgotten. It scares me that one day it's going to be a ghost town, but it's happening all over, said Ollie Page, 62, owner of a restaurant called Ollie's Place, which is a 10-minute drive from Salinas downtown. Younger people are moving out and nothing is keeping them here. We know more people dead than alive in this community. The centerpiece of Freehill is the church, but the original 1816 building no longer exists. There's a 1920s era Rosenwald school building that is used today as a community center and received a recent $50,000 boost from Lowe's. But besides the homes scattered across the foggy hills, most other signs of life are gone. Freehill's last restaurant, Hilltops Cafe, shut down in the 1990s. Juke joints where people came to drink beer and play blues music, with names like Bud Snacks Bar, The Blind Pig, and Tiptoe Inn, were boarded up years before. Today's residents, who are mostly seniors and include few families going to Salina for groceries and other needs. Freehill's decline matches the larger trend in battered Clay County, where a depleted garment manufacturing industry and high unemployment have reduced the entire population, black and white, over the past 2 decades. Practically everybody from here moved away from here back in the day, said Dave Garrett, 77, who grew up working tobacco on other farms near Freehill. Some of them have moved away and never came back. Garrett, the son of the town's butcher, said growing up in Freehill was tough. Some of these people were so poor they could hardly eat, he said. He said he and other kids bused 40 minutes to Cookeville to attend during school segregation, and Freehill was also the occasional target for the Ku Klux Klan. Still, Garrett looks back at Freehill in those days fondly. He said many black residents came from surrounding towns to visit on weekends to have fun, especially at the juke joint. People would come from Bowling Green, Glasgow, Indianapolis, Coal Ridge, Livingston, Cooksville to come over here and party, Garrett said. We'd party from Friday night until Monday. That's how great it was. They'd play them blues-belling rubbing music. Last names like Page, Burris, and Philpott on the gravestones of the Freehill cemeteries are some of the same names that carry on today. And the story of its founding explains the unlikely occurrence of an African-American community arising in an area that seems like Appalachia. Accounts of the Freehill residents vary. They most all begin with the North Carolina slave owner named Virginia Hill, who most say came to a forest near the Cumberland and Obey River sometimes before 1840, purchased 2,000 acres and set her slaves free. Some say the slaves took control of the land themselves. Others say that the slaves that Virginia Hill bought were her 4 biracial children and that she was seeking to avoid scandal. They took her surname, Hill, a name that is documented as the earliest African Americans in Freehill, and named the community after her. The story goes that Freehill became known as a safe haven for runaway slaves leading up to the Civil War and for freed slaves after the war. The names Freehill and Free Hills have interchangeable meanings, descendant of the Hill family or a hilly area where freed slaves lived. A lot of what is said, I think, is based on what was transferred from one generation to the next generation, said Wally Khalif, a history professor at Tennessee Tech University. It's a combination of folklore, partially substantiated by some facts. It's not 100% authenticated, but is plausible. We have Hobson City, Alabama of 1889. In 1889, Hobson City became Alabama's first established all-African-American city and the second in the nation. Hobson City was a magnet for Black excellence and entertainment in the American South. Over time, Hobson City has acquired artifacts, documents, and other items that represent the significant history of the town. The town's leaders, including Mayor Alberta McCrory, recognized that Hobson City not only needed to store these items, but also to share them with the public. They birthed the idea of Hobson City Museum for the study of African-American history and culture. These items both belong to the museum's collections. One is a Sunday hat worn to church by an educator, church pianist, and public figure, Oral Wilson Flowers. She was married to Horace Flowers, a former mayor of Hobson City in the 1950s. Ms. Flowers was a native of Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and a graduate of Knoxville College in Knoxville, Tennessee. Mr. Hobson owned the dry cleaners, and the couple attended Welcome Chapel Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in Hobson City. The white kitchen cabinet is from the home of the late Nellie Mae Jelks. Ms. Jelks, a longtime Hobson City resident, graduated in the 1920s from the Calhoun County Training School. Calhoun was an African-American Rosenwald school under the Jim Crow racial segregation that today is the site of Hobson City's town hall. Ms. Jelks attended Tuskegee Institution, now Tuskegee University, and was a member of the Rising Star United Methodist Church in Hobson City, where she played the piano. With the support of the archival seating program and the additional community-driven archives program sources, Town Mayor Alberta McCrory and the city clerks Pauline Cunningham partnered with UNC's CDA team to make a plan for how to organize, store, and care for the museum's collections. These items tell a unique story of the women in the community and the things they value that show the quality of the life they lived. The hat represents how women represent their best when they gather to worship the Lord on Sunday mornings. The cabinet was a kitchen item where plates and other utensils were stored, and it suggests that the women during the time took great pride in how they took care of their homes and families. Mayor Alberta McCorry. We have Pinewood, Mississippi of 1909. The Pineywood School is a small private historical African-American boarding school in rural Mississippi. It serves approximately 300 students in the grades 9 through 12. In 1909, Dr. Lawrence C. Jones founded the school to provide educational opportunities for the area's poor rural Black children. Lawrence Clifton Jones was born on November 21st, 1884 in St. Joseph, Missouri. In 1907, he graduated from the University of Iowa with a BA in philosophy. Committed to the popular educational model of the practical or industrial education, he spent 2 years on staff at the Utica Institute in Utica, Mississippi. Following a cross-time visit to the state's Pineywood area and observing living conditions there, he realized the residents needed help to improve their means of basic survival. He felt the children could benefit from a school focusing on practical and industrial education. This area of the state, mainly Rankin and Simpson County, had dense hilly pine forests and soil that was poor. Log cabin dwellings, many built by slaves before the Civil War and set far away from the main traveled roads, were common sights. Settlers lived an independent lifestyle, lacking a community. Many rural residents, former slaves turned farmers, were trapped in a substantive level economy, and few owned their own land. Jones enthusiastically traveled through these counties talking to the groups of people about his plan for the high school that they were to help build. To survive, the school would need the support of both Black and white residents. Business owners were interested in a school that would produce better workers. Rural Blacks wanted opportunities for education that were currently denied to them. Without a formal school building, Jones nevertheless declared that the school would be open on the upcoming Monday morning at the Cedar Tree on the old Mordecai Harris place. The gathering of students grew as did the donations. People gave what they could, from a few dollars or a few pennies to gifts of lumber, labor, or other resources. In 1910, property was deeded to the trustees of the Pineywood Industrial Schools, and 3 years later, a charter was granted to Pineywood's Country Life School. Now, the 60-acre campus sits among 2,000 wooded acres of rolling hill forest, open fields and lakes approximately 25 miles southeast of the capital city of Jackson. The self-sufficient campus included a post office, farm, athletic field, chapel, and amphitheater. In an average year, students come to the school from more than 28 states and internationally from Mexico, the Caribbean, and several African nations. The school is funded by both donations and a significant endowment. The Pineywood School is accredited by the Southern Associations of Colleges and Schools and approved by the state of Mississippi. It employs 26 certified full-time teachers from diverse backgrounds. Some of those teachers live on campus and offer individual guidance and support to the students. For the past several years, at least 98% of the graduating seniors enrolled in colleges and universities. Teddy Wilson of 1912 to 1986. Orchestral pianist, violinist, conductor, composer, and arranger of the swing to bebop eras, Teddy Wilson was born Theodore Shaw Wilson on November 24, 1912 in Austin, Texas. He and his brother Gus Wilson, however, were reared on the campus of the Tuskegee Institution in Alabama, as his father, James Wilson, was chairperson of the English department and his mother, Pearl Wilson, was the library director. Teddy Wilson began classical piano studies in Tuskegee at 7. He began playing the violin in the 6th grade and continued it along with the oboe and E-flat clarinet throughout high school. Later, he was the school's military band pianist. Wilson studied music for 1 year at Talladega College, less than 100 miles north of Tuskegee, but moved to Detroit, Michigan at the age of 17 in 1929. There he heard 20-year-old Art Tatum performing jazz in a Detroit nightclub. They bonded and he began his professional music career. Wilson received a union card and played his percussionist Speed Webb's Road Band from 1929 to 1931. Later that year, he joined Louis Armstrong's band before going to Chicago to work in the Gold Coast Club. A year later, Wilson married pianist Violet Irene Armstrong Smith Kitchens from Muncie, Indiana on August 1st, 1932. This was his first of 3 marriages. In 1933, Wilson became a member of Benny Carter's Chocolate Dandies, and from 1935 to 1939, he was a member of the Benny Goodman's Trio in New York City, thus being the first African-American to be featured with a nationally known ensemble during the Jim Crow era. When the trio toured the country, however, Wilson stayed in all-Black hotels. During this period, he made a series of records featuring singer Billie Holiday, including The Way You Look Tonight. He also collaborated with Lena Horne and Ella Fitzgerald. In 1939, Wilson formed Teddy Wilson and his orchestra and conducted the Teddy Wilson Music School for Pianists. From 1945 to 1952, while a staff musician at CBS Radio 58, he taught annual summer classes on jazz piano improvisations at Juilliard School in New York City. In the 1960s, he was a musical director for the Dick Cavett Show. Wilson appeared in films including Hollywood Hotel in both 1938 and 1955. He played himself in Hollywood's Benny Goodman Story. He rejoined Goodman in 1952, toured Asia, Australia, Europe, including a performance at the Brussels World's Fair in 1958. Wilson returned to the U.S. to perform at Carnegie Hall in 1982. Teddy Wilson was the father of bass player Theodore Wilson and Stephen Wilson, with whom he created a musical trio in New York. A recipient of numerous awards and accolades, Wilson received the Golden Esquire Award for his piano accompanying Billie Holiday singing The Man I Love. He received an honorary doctorate of music from Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts. Teddy Wilson, who contributed to over 400 albums, died of stomach cancer in New Britain, Connecticut on July 31st, 1986. He was 73. He was inducted into the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame in Vista, California in 1993. Frank Cavalier Baxton Jr., 1929 to 1969. An African-American animator and director, Frank Cavalier Baxter Jr., was born on March 31st, 1929 in Los Angeles, California to Frank Cavalier Baxton from Cincinnati, Ohio, and Mignon A. Calloway Braxton from Atlanta, Georgia. Frank had a gift and talent for drawing and painting as a child and was often seen with a sketch pad and pencil in his hand. He graduated from Los Angeles Manual Arts High School in 1947, where he was active with the school's art project and dominated his class yearbooks with his caricatures of classmates and events at MAH. Afterwards, he studied arts and music at Los Angeles City College. In 1948, at 19, Braxton became the first African-American animator hired at Walt Disney in LA. He resigned, however, 10 days after beginning this position. The reason for leaving Disney was never disclosed. He went on to work as an assistant animator at Seamus Calhoun Production in LA. Theodore Wilson and Stephen Wilson, a percussionist, growing impatient with race relations in the United States, which Braxton believed impacted his job prospects. Braxton left the country for a year to manage Estudios Mauro, an animated cartoon studios in Barcelona, Spain. 5 years later, in 1954, Warner Brothers hired Braxton upon the request of the highly respected Ben Washam, the senior animator, and Chuck Jones, unit at the studio where Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies were produced. Braxton immediately became an in-betweener and Washam's assistant and later served as journeyman animator. At the time, he was the first and only black animator working in Hollywood. Braxton left Warner Brothers in 1956 and began working for J. Ward Productions, Inc., an animation studio based in Costa Mesa. While with J. Ward Productions, his work was aired on NBC TV beginning in 1959. That work included directing the network's cartoon shows Peabody's Improbable History and The Bullwinkle Show. The following year, in 1960, Braxton produced the Mr. Magoo animated television series. That same year, he was elected president of the Screen's Cartoonist Guild, thus being the first black person to be the president of any film union in Hollywood. 4 years later, in 1964, he directed Linus the Lionhearted. In 1967, Braxton animated on the Charlie Brown TV special, You're in Love, Charlie Brown, and He's Your Dog, Charlie Brown, and worked as a director for J. Ward on Ward's last TV series, George of the Jungle. Frank Cavalier Baxter Jr. animated the project A Boy Named Charlie Brown in 1969. He died from cancer in Los Angeles on June 1st, 1969. Soon after completing the project, he was 40. In 2019, Braxton was posthumously awarded the International Animated Film Association Winsor McKay Award for his recognition in lifetime career contributions of the art of animation. He was also a posthumously recipient of the Animation Annie Award for excellence in animation. Dr. John Bowman Banks, J.B., was the first black physician to practice medicine in Natchez, Mississippi. He recruited Dr. Albert Woods Dumas, the second black physician to practice in the city. Together with 4 other businessmen, they founded an African-American bank in Natchez called Bluff City Savings Bank in 1906. During the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, Banks' house was the headquarters of the Natchez branch of the NAACP. It was also the home of NAACP President George McAuliffe. The building is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is home of the Dr. John Bowman Banks Museum. In 2022, the Mississippi Humanities Council and Visit Mississippi Place, the house of Mississippi Freedom Trail, and the U.S. Civil Rights Trail. A ceremony for the unveiling of the Freedom Trail marker was held in April 2023. Banks was born on February 14, 1862 in Louisiana. He spent his early years in Summit, Mississippi, a small town northwest of Macomb in Pike County. Banks began his higher education in 1877 at Leland University of New Orleans, Louisiana. Banks' time at the school was interrupted by an outbreak of yellow fever, which forced him to end his studies. He and his wife Sarah had 2 children, a daughter, Alberta Beatrice Banks, and a son, Oliver M. Banks. In 1883, Banks left his home to attend Meharry Medical College, a private historically black school in Nashville, Tennessee. Banks graduated from Meharry, and on April 9, 1885, the Mississippi State Board of Health issued him his medical license. A few years later, he opened his practice in Natchez. Banks was a successful businessman strong community leader, and an active Zion Chapel AME church member, where Hiram Rose Revel, the first African-American to serve in the U.S. Senate, had served as pastor. Banks also was a friend of Booker T. Washington. Around 1892, he built a house at 9th Street, Catherine Street. Dr. Banks' daughter, Alberta, taught at the Union School in Natchez, founded in 1871, at the first public co-educational school established for the African-American community. His son, Oliver, studied medicine and was also a doctor. The Banks enjoyed the respect of the Black and white communities. John Bowman Banks was an active community member, joining in the efforts to support refugees fleeing flooding in Davis Island in 1897, and in 1898, when Union schools needed an extra teacher to help teach 120 students, he sought and received support from Natchez city officials to have a new teacher hired. Banks died in his home on December 30th, 1911. He was 49 years old. His funeral was at Zion Chapel, and his body was interred at Natchez City Cemetery in Adams County.